Là, il serait temps que Justin Trudeau fasse un nouveau tweet pour dire de plus venir parce qu'on a dépassé notre capacité d'accueil.
Firing off a letter to the Prime Minister, François Legault writes, I ask that you urgently and permanently take all the necessary measures to move the asylum seekers to other provinces as soon as they arrive at the border.
This is not sidewalk?
Go.
Okay, don't touch me.
Roxham Road.
Got a job with the Red Cross at the refugee camp, so I know a bit about it.
Frankly, what's in it for us as Canadians? A warm, fuzzy feeling that we helped someone in need? Well, frankly, that's not good enough because I see people in need right here.
Is this like a quarantine place?
The RCMP intercepted 39,171 asylum seekers in Quebec in the year 2022 alone. And now we have the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, a Democrat, who's handing out free bus tickets to Plattsburgh, New York, so that migrants in his city can make their way up to Roxham Road and cross illegally into Canada.
We will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
Every Canadian city is facing a crisis of homelessness right now. The scene behind me is something that might be familiar to every single Canadian. It's close to home wherever you are. There's not enough resources, not enough homes, and not enough support for people that are left in the street. They're Canadians, they deserve a place to live, but for some reason, the government just forgets about them.
It's illegal to enter in Canada by here.
Yet somehow, there are people who come from thousands of kilometers away. They come into Canada through a back door and leech off of those same services, those same homes, and those same supports that the government should be giving to its own citizens.
How are they getting in? Who gave them the key to Canada's back door? And how big of a problem is this, really? Quebec's Roxham Road has been on the public radar since about 2017, when it came to light that this unassuming road bordering New York State is a popular illegal border crossing point. The reason why so many migrants in the US take the bus to Plattsburgh, New York, and then hire a cab to take them up to Roxham Road is because they can avoid being subject to the Safe Third Country Agreement, which obliges asylum seekers to send their application to the first safe country they reach, which in this case would be easily the United States. So even though migrants from Haiti or the Congo or Colombia have already landed in the US and should technically have to make their asylum claim there, they use the Roxham Road loophole to instead claim asylum in Canada. They can do this because they're not entering Canada through a legal point of entry.
You're also going to be arrested for illegal entry in Canada. Okay? You understand?
And so they're arrested as a formality for illegally crossing the US-Canada border, but then once they declare they're claiming asylum, they will not be charged with illegal entry. That's why the countersignal dispatched our reporter, Mocha, to the Canadian side of the border.
Is this like a quarantine place?
What Mocha uncovered there was a complete and utter disgrace. Border guards were caught on camera getting into an altercation with him, pushing him, and trying to cover up the grotesque illegal border crossing.
Why?
Go.
This is not sidewalk?
Go.
Okay, don't touch me.
Hey,
I'm
hey,
going.
go.
All right, look,
They
I'm
call
going.
this. They call this.
I'm going. I'm going. Why?
Oh,
The media over there is allowed to
Go.
record.
Go.
You didn't have to touch me.
Yes.
What's your name?
Laisse faire mon nom. Oh, go.
I don't know French. Why can't I be here? This is not.
French, c'est
This,
ça.
this is not public side. This is not public road.
Oh, they call this. Oh,
Oh, you're making it so much difficult for me to report. I'm not. Yeah, I came with the car. No, I walk. No, it's very secretive.
Go.
How far?
Go.
Can I stay here?
Go.
Go where?
Go.
Go where?
This side. Go.
The footage is a clear representation of just how far the Trudeau government is willing to go to conceal the truth about what's happening at Roxham Road. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau only egged these illegal actions on with his infamous 2017 Welcome to Canada tweet that read, "To those fleeing persecution, terror, and war, Canadians will welcome you. Regardless of your faith, diversity is our strength. Hashtag Welcome to Canada." Now, over 5 years later, there are shocking new revelations regarding Roxham Road. According to a February 2023 report from La Presse, it's costing the province of Quebec an additional $20 million a month to provide social benefits to asylum seekers, and they want all of us as taxpayers to foot that bill for them. The vast majority of our country's asylum seekers get in via Quebec's Roxham Road, and that's according to government data. The RCMP intercepted 39,171 asylum seekers in Quebec in the year 2022 alone. That's compared to only 369 in the entire rest of the country. An RCMP officer at Roxham Road told the Countersignal off the record that most of the people who are crossing are families or are pregnant women who are just hoping to give birth in Canada to secure citizenship for their children and them in the future. And now we have the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, a Democrat, who is handing out free bus tickets to Plattsburgh, New York, so that migrants in his city can make their way up to Roxham Road and cross illegally into Canada, to abuse our border, our systems, our country, our people, and especially the people who are in need of services and support.
Today, I am declaring a state of emergency in the city of New York.
This ties back to October 2022, when Mayor Adams declared a state of emergency after his city's homeless shelters became overwhelmed by an influx of thousands of migrants from Latin America.
My name is Paul Marino. I've been living here for 7 or 8 years now.
A local resident and former Red Cross volunteer who witnessed the inner workings of the migrant camp firsthand. You won't believe what he has to say.
Got a job with the Red Cross at the refugee camp, so I know a bit about it, who crosses and so on, and how much crossing there is. When we first arrived here, Roxham Road was functional, but in a different way. There was no police presence, or just people crossing. That's been quite interesting. It's been well organized for the last, I would say, 4 or 5 years since the Red Cross came in, took over. They left. Now it's a private consulting company that looks after the staffing and the work that goes on there. New York is actually paying bus tickets now for the migrants that are coming from Texas and Florida or wherever, to help them get to Canada. Sort of dumping the problem onto us, if you like, you could say that. So basically it's an organized crossing that goes on. The people who are formally arrested by the RCMP are then transferred a couple of miles away along the Highway 15 to the refugee camp. They spend a couple of days there, maximum, and then they are brought to Montreal, where they are basically given a period of time, I can't remember how much, to live in the YMCA or someplace like that. And then they're free to go wherever they want in Canada.
Roxham Road. Venezuela? Oh. Mexico. Oh.
An RCMP source at Roxham Road confirmed to the Countersignal that the majority of illegal crossers he comes across are Spanish speakers. He estimated that 200 people per day are crossing at Roxham Road.
One family.
One family. Yeah. From where? Do you know? Yeah.
And the taxi drivers that drop them off at the border are very friendly with the RCMP. After all, those cabbies have been doing this on a daily basis for years. The RCMP officer we spoke with finished the conversation by saying to us, quote, "I will probably get disciplined for talking to you." But now, it's not only taxi drivers trafficking people to Roxham Road. Several U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents are currently under investigation for taking cash to drive migrants up to the illegal crossing point while they were off duty.
Quebec accept in total more immigrants.
Quebec Premier Francois Legault has pointed out that it can take about 14 months for the federal government to determine if a Roxham crosser is a genuine refugee and could get a work permit.
14 months and more to the federal government to determine if they are or not a refugee. That's where's the problem, because during those 14 months, we have to offer them services, and our capacity is not unlimited.
if they give birth in Canada, well, their child will be an official Canadian voter in just 18 years. According to Citizenship Canada spokesperson Jeffrey McDonald, from 2021 to 2022, Quebec received over $697 million in compensation from the federal government to provide settlement and integration services in the province. Once Roxham border crossers officially enter Quebec soil, the Quebec government agency called PRIDA, Regional Program for the Settlement and Integration of Asylum Seekers, gives them short-term housing, medical care, access to legal aid, meetings with a social worker, bus tickets, food vouchers, help signing up for welfare benefits with the average payment being $801.50 per month, and assistance applying for a work permit and enrolling children in school. Needless to say, these services are provided cost-free to the asylum seeker. According to La Presse, the number of asylum seekers receiving welfare checks in Quebec was nearly 13,000 people in 2021, but that ballooned to over 37,000 people in 2022. Virtually all of these asylum seekers receiving social assistance reside in Montreal. I've seen the migrants coming across the border with my own eyes. With their Gucci bags and Ferrari-branded clothing, they're anything but fleeing persecution, terror, or war. They're fleeing New York. It doesn't make any sense. However, Justin Trudeau and Quebec Premier François Legault are now teaming up to transfer these illegal migrants everywhere else in Canada, to flood the systems of every other overwhelmed city with their problem, the problem that Quebec, frankly, elected. Already in 2022, the federal government transferred a portion of the asylum seekers to Ontario, with Niagara Falls being by far the preferred destination. A very nice vacation, after all.
And if we could...
For his part, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has stated he wants Roxham Road closed so that migrants can apply through the legal channels.
It is not legal, if I could, it is not legal to cross there. That is a reality. It is not legal to cross at that point. And we need to fix the system so that people come here through the normal points of entry, and that is a two-step process. Renegotiate the deal with the Americans and speed up the processing of immigration generally.
Many economists are predicting we are now headed towards a massive recession, if we're not already in one. But these Roxham Road border crossers are putting in more and more strain on our housing supply, our schools, and our healthcare resources, yet we as taxpayers are funding them to do so. Nonprofit organizations and homeless shelters are already telling the CBC how overrun they are with asylum seekers. For the past few months, the head of the homeless shelters in the Welcome Hall mission in Montreal has been seeing an increase in asylum seekers and has been taking in 37 asylum seekers every month on average.
These illegal immigrants skipped the queue, not just in front of other real immigrants in real need of immigrating to Canada, or immigrants who would actually benefit Canadian society instead of leech off of it. They skipped the queue to social services, housing, medicine, healthcare, all of this stuff that these people need. Well, those illegal immigrants that crossed Roxham Road, they think that they deserve it before anyone else. And frankly, what's in it for us as Canadians? A warm, fuzzy feeling that we helped someone in need? Well, frankly, that's not good enough, because I see people in need right here. People that need our support and the support of our government. But unfortunately, Justin Trudeau's eyes are fixated on something else, being woke.
We will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.
I hope you enjoyed this in-depth look at what is going on between the border of Quebec and New York. Canada's back door is wide open, and it is all because Justin Trudeau is choosing to ignore the problem. He's choosing to ignore solutions as well. If you want to send Justin Trudeau a message, go to shutdownroxham.com, sign the petition, and we're going to be sending it to his front door so he can read through every name of every Canadian who says together that this is outrageous, this must stop, and we must start putting Canadians first. go to shutdownroxham.com. Now, I want to thank everyone who contributed to this documentary. My cameraman, Mocha, my few writers as well. You can see them credited here on the side. It's a lot of work that goes into these documentaries like this. And if you want to support this work and more work like it, you can become a newsroom insider by going to thecountersignal.com/subscription.
We will continue to keep you informed as this story unfolds.